My stepson upset my daughter by saying I picked him over him and that she should stop visiting. Me and my ex split 8 years ago. I met my current wife during our divorce and married her pretty quickly after it was finalized. I now live with my wife and stepson, and while my ex offered 50-50 custody of our daughter, I felt it better she stayed with her mother so I could adjust to life with my new wife and stepson. So she came every other weekend before the pandemic. She's been with her mom since March. Here's where the issue comes in. My stepson feels threatened by my daughter when she's here. I'm the only father figure he's ever had, and he doesn't like sharing my attention, so he's often quite rude and mean to her. We normally just assure her it's because he's insecure. My stepson came home yesterday cheerfully saying that my daughter said she'd never come here again. I called my daughter to ask why she'd say that. According to her, my stepson has been saying since school resumed that I picked him over her and that I hated her coming to visit and how everyone was so happy these months she didn't visit. No one wanted her there and she needed to just stay away from us. He denied it, of course, but my daughter's friend filmed him at some point and sent it to me. When confronted, he got watery-eyed and said he was just afraid of losing me. I told my daughter that I obviously didn't feel that way, and he just felt threatened by her presence. She asked if I was going to actually do something about his behavior this time or if I was just going to brush it under the rug like I always did. I told her I didn't brush anything under the rug, but I wasn't going to punish him for being insecure about losing his father figure. She told me she was tired of his daddy issues being an excuse to treat her like poop, and since I wouldn't stand up for her, she wouldn't be visiting again. I tried to talk to my ex about it, but she said I picked him over her repeatedly and never stood up for her when he treated her poorly, so I don't get to play the victim now that she's fed up with it. I think they're both being oversensitive here, and my daughter needs to get over it and visit again, but my brother said I let my stepson boost my ego and failed my daughter by not standing up for her.
Me 25M grew up with parents 48F and 52M who had an open marriage. It sort of messed me up, and my parents wants to know why I had not spoken to them in almost 4 years. New update. I found out when I was around 12 that my parents liked to play around, if call it, that I did not get until I was around 14 what that really meant. Anyways, I kept my mouth shut and focused on myself and moved out when I was 18. We have barely spoken since. I ended up becoming very insecure. I struggled when it came to dating and girls and was alone for most of my teens. Mom and dad was this perfect couple that was well liked by everyone. All I can remember is how alone I felt during that time. I was too afraid to speak to my parents about how I had it. They were always smiling and seemed to have the perfect marriage while they saw other people while I felt alone, miserable. They used to go on weekend trips and was alone for many weekends, and they rarely brought me along for vacations, and I ended up being on my own when they did as well. I struggle with depression and start seeing a therapist and are on antidepressants right now. I just felt like I did not matter to my parents at all and see no real reason for why I should talk to them now. I have not celebrated Christmas with them or not been at home since I was 19 because I honestly have nothing but bad memories from living with them. I just felt like I was in the way. Not sure what I should do here. My emotions are all over the place. I don't think they know I struggle with depression. Update of 2021. I tried posting this earlier, but yeah, some other things have also happened, so wanted to add that as well. I decided to write a letter but ended with using that letter as reference to what I wanted to say to them instead. I wrote the letter and actually just planned to drop in their mailbox and just let them read it. But honestly, after so many years, I needed to have the conversation with them, so I did. So I went home and surprise, dad and mom had a friend over, the woman who I ran into a few days ago. Let's call her Claire. They were just sitting in the living room just talking. I asked Claire lightly to leave because I need to speak to my parents. She said sure and she left. My parents understood I had something to discuss and they did not argue. Apparently they were talking about me. Claire actually came over because she was worried about me after I basically ignored her the other day when I ran into her. I sat down with my parents, had the letter I had written, and they understood I had a lot to say. The whole thing was weird. I sounded like a prosecutor trying to convince a jury of all my parents' wrongdoings. It ended up being 40-minute indictment of my parents. I went through all of it, how alone I felt, me struggling with depression, me seeing a therapist on antidepressants, me feeling since I was 11 that was always in the way, that I never mattered to them, and that other people were always more important. How Claire, who was 25, the same age I am now, when she started hanging around, actually gave more of a damn did. How you, dad, yelled at me when I messed up the settings on the dishwasher while you were away. I was 11 and did not know how it worked, and that I offered to wash them by hand, which I did. I was bullied in school and was socially awkward, had no friends, and was always alone both at school and at home. I was 11 and had to deal with being alone on the weekends. Even Christmas was weird and awkward. I remember seeing families light Christmas trees in our street, seeing parents and their kids. But you guys went to your Christmas get-togethers and only on Christmas Day were you home, and I honestly felt alone then as well. I have no such memories or felt any belonging whatsoever, and now you ask why I have barely spoken to you for 4 years. I don't know you and you never bothered to get to know me. Other people were always more important. When I found out and understood what you guys were into, I was even more mad. Why was that more important? How is it fair that you are happy and I am alone and miserable? It's not fair because you did this to me. I have spent my childhood alone, my teens alone, and now my 20s alone so far. I never had a girlfriend because I struggle to trust people and have no idea how to get close to people. You shared a picture of me on FB, one of the few of us together from when I was a kid. Saw Claire and your other GF comment on it, how cute I was and what a great family we were. Notice anything on those pictures? I never smiled. Why did you even have me to begin with? Clearly, I was just a prop for you to show off, to let others know what great parents you were. Your FP profiles make me sick to honest. Dad wanted to say something, and Mom just looked stunned and she had tears. I just got up and left, and that was that. I never yelled or called them any names. I was surprisingly calm. I honestly felt numb walking out, but also a lot lighter. I left my spare key to their place and just walked back to my place. Mom has been texting and tried calling me. I think they are both struggling on what to say. I just demanded they remove the pictures of me from their FB, which they did. They do not get to pretend to the world like they were great parents, and more, I refuse to be a prop. So that's the update. Still gonna continue with my therapists, or may need to find in one. New update. Update 2. Reddit Oct 11, 2021. Just wanted to give an update and thank you for all the comments. I decided to switch therapists, and the new one is better than my old one. Still dealing with anxiety and feel very lonely sometimes, but trying to get the day. Had a long talk with Mom. Actually decided to stop by my place. She and I talked for almost 3 hours. I decided not to berate her and instead just being honest and explain how my life has been and how I am dealing with a bunch of things. It was as honest as it could get with me, basically just sharing how I was doing. Mom did not realize how bad it was, and she just gave me a hug. I don't know why, but that helped. She was not sure what to say about everything, and I don't really blame her. She said, come home for a while, especially at Christmas. You don't have to sit in your apartment alone. Told her I would think about it. Mom looks like she finally realized that I had been in pain for quite some time, and her recognizing that is, I guess, what I really wanted. Like she finally got it. So yeah, progress I guess. Still not sure what the future holds. Still feel very apathetic, and my anxiety can get the best of me sometimes, and have had days I feel very low, like nothing matters anymore. But I guess it's a step in the right direction. This is a repost sub. I am not the op. Do not contact the ops or comment on link posts. Remember, Rule 7. Why does my 41F partner, 46M, refuse to give me access to household security cameras? We've been together 8 years, lived together for 6, share a child and a home. We moved to a new house with a yard about 3 years ago, and he loves this house more than anything. He's put security cameras all around the exterior of the home, pointing in all directions, and even has one in the garage, and they're motion activated and send the recording to the cloud. At least one of them has the ability to record sound. He's away for work for extended periods of time, 1 to 3 weeks usually, and recently, after noticing our new camera outside, I mentioned I'd like to also have access to the recording since I'm home alone with our child, and what if I hear something etc. while he's overseas and I can't see what's going on outside. We live in a safe neighborhood in a small town, to my knowledge. When he talks about it, there's mostly just wildlife caught on these cameras, such as bear, deer, cougars, and neighbors walking their dogs, etc., or someone coming to the door to drop off package. He refuses to give me access and says that it would just complicate things, and we'd end up fighting over it or some weird reason. It honestly doesn't make sense to me. He can see my every move via these cameras, and if I had access I'd feel better about that. But he refuses. We have a front door keypad instead of a typical lock with key. I also learned about 2 years after moving into our home that he uses a different door code than me and my daughter. He says there's one main one, the one he uses, and one for everyone else, basically my daughter and I. He can see when the codes have been used each time. There's a log that's kept. My first impressions of both of these scenarios are feelings of distrust and confusion. Maybe I'm sensing that he doesn't trust me, and I'm picking up on that. Confusion because who the hell thinks this way? What's going on in his mind? But it stresses me out, and I'd prefer to believe he's just being cautious and protective of THEHOESE, not controlling of M. Curious to know how this comes across to others. My 27F boyfriend 24M hit me in my pregnant stomach. What should my next move be? Together for 3 years. We seem to have by this recurring argument by about him being jealous of my oldest son's father. Today, I received a call from my son's school about some trouble he got in with his classmate. I called his dad to inform him, which is something we always do in situations concerning our child. I always communicate matters with my son to his father and vice versa. We strictly discuss our son and nothing else whatsoever. There's never any inappropriate interaction between my son's dad and I, ever. When the phone call was over, we continued the conversation through text. This must have rubbed my boyfriend the wrong way because his body language appeared tense all of a sudden. I asked him what was wrong, and he responded that he didn't like the fact that some of my passwords are my son's name because he has the same name as his dad. I told him my passwords are just that, my child's name, not his dad's. He seemingly got over it and we moved on. Fast forward an hour later, he comes in the room and tells me he will text me later while he's at band practice, and that he wants me to respond back as fast as I responded to my son's father earlier today. He never texts me while he's at band practice. He always calls after, or I'll just see him when he gets home. So I told him I'm not responding at all since he's comparing himself to my oldest son's dad again and only texting me just to see if I'll respond in a certain time. This gets him even more upset and he begins raising his voice. I go to try and leave the room to avoid arguing, and he blocks me from leaving and telling I'm not leaving, so I start yelling for him to move out of my way. My boyfriend is a huge guy, 6'1", 260 lbs, compared to my petite self, 5'0", 164 lbs. By this point, My 1-year-old is crying and I'm trying to get to him. My boyfriend keeps pushing my hand every time I grab the doorknob and using his weight to keep the door from opening, so I hit him in his shoulder. Not hard at all, he probably barely felt it. And he hit me back way harder in my stomach. I'm currently 6 months pregnant, so I turn the other way and start to cry. Instead of apologizing, he starts to blame me, saying it was a reflex because I hit him first and he didn't mean to hit my stomach. He also said that he didn't even hit me that hard, which was false. He tries to grab me and I lash out in anger, hitting, yelling, and kicking. When he finally let me leave the room, he follows me to the other room demanding talk right now. I told him no and he proceeds to pull and yank off of the bed to get me to go with him until I yelled at him to leave me alone. Our 1-year-old is next to him while he's doing this, so he screams and cries for me to come up. I told my boyfriend he's scaring the baby and he just keeps trying to take him from me, so I put him down and pull me out of the room. He eventually gave up and said I'm using our son as an excuse to avoid talking. I'm just at a loss of words right now. Just to clarify, we weren't in front of my son when I kicked him. I hit and kicked him to get into the room where my son was crying.